In a world without electricity, where the concept of refrigeration was centuries away, medieval kitchens faced a challenge that could mean the difference between life and death: keeping food fresh. How did they survive without the modern luxuries we take for granted? Welcome to the fascinating world of medieval food preservation by Black Coffee. Chapter 1: The Need for Preservation. The medieval era was marked by long winters, unpredictable harvests, and the ever-present threat of famine. Food scarcity meant that preserving what little was available was not just a convenience. It was a necessity. Without refrigeration, medieval people had to rely on ingenious techniques to ensure their food didn't spoil. In a time where seasonal availability dictated diets, preserving food meant survival. Medieval households planned their food storage carefully, ensuring there was enough to last through the lean months. While the wealthy had access to a greater variety of preservation techniques, peasants depended on whatever methods were within reach, such as root cellaring, salting, and drying. Chapter 2: The power of salt. Salt was one of the most powerful tools in a medieval kitchen. Used for curing meat and fish, it drew out moisture and inhibited bacterial growth, preventing decay. Salted meats and fish could last for months, sustaining families through harsh winters and long journeys. In coastal regions, salt production was a thriving industry, as vast salt pans were used to extract this precious commodity. Inland, salt was an expensive but necessary ingredient, traded over long distances. Salt curing was so effective that it is still used today in delicacies like prosciutto and salted cod. For those who could not afford large amounts of salt, alternatives like heavily spiced and dried meats were used to delay spoilage. This necessity helped shape medieval cuisine, which often incorporated strong flavors to mask the effects of aging food. Chapter 3: The smokehouse. Secret smoking was another vital preservation technique. Meats were hung above slow-burning fires, absorbing the antimicrobial properties of smoke while being gradually dehydrated. This process not only extended shelf life, but also enhanced flavor. Smokehouses were common in medieval villages, often attached to homes or built as separate structures. The type of wood used, oak, applewood, or hickory, would impart distinct flavors to the meat, making smoked delicacies like bacon and kippers a staple of medieval diets. The higher the meat was hung, the slower and more thorough the curing process. Beyond meat, some cheeses were also exposed to smoke to increase their longevity. Smoked cheeses remain a delicacy today, a reminder of medieval ingenuity. Chapter 4: Drying and dehydration. Without refrigeration, removing moisture from food was one of the most effective ways to prevent spoilage. Fruits, herbs, and even meat were sun-dried or air-dried, ensuring they could be stored for extended periods. Bread, too, was baked hard and dry, often turning into rations that needed to be softened with soups and broths before consumption. Grains were stored in granaries protected from rodents and moisture, and ground into flour as needed. A well-stocked pantry was essential for surviving the winter months. Dried legumes, such as beans and lentils, were another crucial food source, providing sustenance long after the growing season ended. The reliance on dried food led to the development of hearty dishes like pottages and stews, where dried ingredients could be rehydrated and made palatable. Chapter 5: Pickling and fermentation. Fermentation was both a preservation method and a way of enhancing food. Medieval people fermented vegetables into pickles and sauerkraut, while dairy was turned into cheese and yogurt. Beer and mead were not only a source of nutrition, but also a way to purify water, as the fermentation process killed harmful bacteria. This made alcoholic beverages safer to drink than untreated water sources, especially in crowded medieval towns, where contamination was common. Vinegar, often made from soured wine or ale, was another key ingredient in preservation. Pickling food in vinegar extended its shelf life, while adding a distinct tangy flavor. Fermented foods provided essential nutrients and played a role in maintaining gut health, even if medieval people didn't fully understand the science behind it. Chapter 6. Underground storage and ice houses. Before refrigeration, people cleverly used the Earth's natural insulation. Root cellars kept vegetables fresh by maintaining a steady, cool temperature. These cellars, dug into the ground or built into homes, provided the perfect conditions for storing potatoes, carrots, onions, and apples for months. Wealthier households built ice houses, underground chambers filled with blocks of ice harvested in winter, insulated with straw. These ice blocks could last deep into summer, allowing the elite to enjoy chilled beverages and preserved delicacies. Some monasteries and noble estates even experimented with storing perishable dairy products like milk and butter in these cooled spaces. Chapter 7. Honey and fat. Sealing. Another clever medieval preservation technique involved sealing food under layers of honey or rendered fat. Honey's natural antibacterial properties made it an excellent medium for preserving fruits and even some meats. Foods submerged in honey remained edible for extended periods, and honey itself never spoiled. Fat. Sealing, also known as confit, was another strategy. Cooked meats were packed into clay or stone jars and covered with a thick layer of rendered fat, preventing exposure to air and bacteria. This method was especially popular in France and parts of Eastern Europe, where goose and pork confits became traditional dishes. Though centuries have passed, many of these preservation methods still exist in our modern world. From salted meats to pickles and fermented drinks, medieval ingenuity has stood the test of time. Perhaps, in an age of convenience, there is still wisdom to be found in the past,